Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Victober video. Yes, I am all into Victober. If you are not familiar with Victober, which I can't believe because you are watching BookTube, but I will leave links to the organizers down below and also links to the Goodreads group. You can check out the prompts and the challenges and, everything Victober. I promised you a video ranking all of the Bronte sisters novels, and that video will come, but I still have one book to read, The Professor, before I can do the ranking. So I thought, why not also do a ranking of George Eliot's books, or novels, I should say, because I have read them all by now. There are 7 novels, as shown in the thumbnail, and no, the thumbnail is not the ranking order. And I leave links to all the 7 books down below in order of publication date. And public service announcement, there are 2 stories that I'm not including in the ranking. That's The Lifted Veil, a short story, and the collection of 3 stories in Clerical Life. So those 2 are not included, simply because I haven't read them and because they are not novels. But the 7 novels I can rank, and I'll start from number 7, so my least favorite up to my favorite. And I decided to do my favorite, so not trying to do, which one is the best novel or the most accomplished novel. No, it's just my personal preference. And in number 7, my absolute least favorite book of George Eliot, and I will check the publication date, 1860. And that is The Mill on the Floss. I really didn't like it. With a lot of the other books, especially when we get to the first 3 or so, it was quite difficult because I really enjoyed them. But this one, without any doubt, that would come in last because I just don't like it. It's basically the story of 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, and the moral issues with their relationship and how they fare in life, and the brother wants to achieve something. And yeah, I thought it was boring, and it's not a thin book. It was very moralistic for me in a way that I didn't find interesting, but mostly I really thought it was not such an engaging story. It was not really very, not that the plot was bad or that it was badly plotted, and George Eliot writes beautiful prose. But I just thought it was not interesting. These siblings struggling with morality issues, and the brother was just really not. He was on the moral high horse, and that annoyed the hell out of me because I thought, no, I'm not going to swear when I do Victober video. So, The Mill on the Floss, not my thing. Number 6 is a book that was not bad. It's not that I disliked it like I dislike The Mill on the Floss, but it was just not resonating with me because I really don't know enough of the political background that the book explores, and that is Felix Holt, The Radical, published 1866. It's about 2 men who run for parliament as radicals, so to speak, and one, of course, is fake, and the other one, Felix, is the real, genuine thing. And then you have a woman, Esther, I think her name is, if I remember correctly, who is quite snobby, but she will develop in the course of the book, and then there is a love interest. If you haven't read it, I'm not going to spoil it. So this is, I think, really interesting for people either know much more than I do about the political situation and the political machinations at that time and what kind of political topics were at the forefront. But I just couldn't really get into that story. Again, beautiful prose. There's nothing wrong with the book. Mill the Floss, there is a lot of things wrong with the book, in my opinion. It's just not a really good book. But this one is just something that I felt it was not for me. So it was more me than the book. Then coming in at number 5 is George Eliot's debut novel, Bead. Published in, 1857, I think. Is that right? Yes, no, 59, I'm sorry. 1859. And here again, I struggled a lot with the dialect. And I liked the book, but I didn't love it. So this is the book about Bead and his brother and their respective love interests. And there is a fallen woman, of course, somebody who gets seduced by the wrong guy and is left, to fend for herself. Again, I'm not going to go into any details in case you haven't read it yet. I think it's amazing that this is a debut novel. Let's be honest. It's also amazing, by the way, if you look at the publication dates, how fast George Eliot wrote. I mean, it's like the first couple of books, it's every year or every other years, and they are all 600 pages or more. This one is, 610 pages. I don't know how she did that. She was very diligent and probably also a fast writer. But anyway, so the moralistic aspect, again, didn't quite work with me, especially the look on women and the fallen women in particular. That's just not something that I enjoy that much to read. That's also a thing that I'm wondering now that I've read all of George Eliot's novels. I don't think her treatment of women is pretty harsh at times, especially women who wander from the moral path. And I find that curious because Eliot herself, in her own life, she didn't give a bloody something about what people thought of her, the life she was leading. I mean, she was living with a married man for a big portion of her life. So for herself, she claimed, which I think is fantastic, that you think, I want to live my life the way I want it, and as long as I don't hurt anybody, I don't care for the, morals of the 19th century. But in her books, she is quite, she's also quite on the moral high horse, as I mentioned with the first book, Mill the Floss, especially when it comes to women. But still, it's an engaging story. There's a lot happening. Adam and the brother, this relationship when they sort of fall for the same woman, but also the way women are looked at, what kind of place they should have in life. There's a lot of religion also, because one of the women is a lay preacher. I'm not sure whether that's the right expression, but she is, she can't become a priest, obviously, because she's a woman and it's the 19th century. But she is engaged as a preacher. So a lot of very interesting topics. But yeah, I liked it. but I wasn't in love with it. Then we have 4 left, and all these, the next 4 I really, really, really like. So the ranking is a bit, it's like number 4, and then a little bit higher is number 3, if you get my drift. And the first one is the shortest book that Eliot wrote as a novel, and that is Silas Mana. And again, I have to look up the publication date, 1861. So a year after Mill on the Floss. And this again is, morals are a big part of Eliot's novels. And I'm not, when I said I didn't like the moralistic attitude, it's not that I don't like if morals are discussed, but I don't like the finger wagging moralistic attitude. That's what I meant. But anyway, so this is Silas Mana, who was, when the book opens, he is betrayed, and then he moves away and finds, he's really disappointed with the world, and becomes very, lives in solitude, so to speak, in a village, outskirts of a village, and for 10, 20 years, and is not, he's well regarded in a way, but he's not part of the community, and he doesn't want to be. But then something happens, of course, involving a little child, and we see Silas being able to turn his life around in a way. And yes, I'm sorry, that's a bit of a spoiler. I should have said that before. But I really loved the brevity of this one, as not that I mind the long books, but Eliot in this book was able to really tackle big issues, but much more in a much more brief and focused way. And I really enjoyed this. So this is number 4, but yeah, I said that already. The first 4 I really love. Coming in at number 3 is Daniel de Ronda. I think that book is beloved by a lot of people. It's her last novel, 1876. And it's again about finding your place. And this time religion also has the aspect of being a Jew, what that means. The relationship with, again, women, mother, but also friendship, love interest. It's difficult to talk about the books without giving any spoilers. So Daniel de Ronda, the title, name in the title, is the main protagonist. And there is also a woman, and I completely blanking on her name, but never mind. And this encounter at the beginning sort of sets the tone. And we learn about Daniel's, he's a very moral person without the finger wagging. And he has to find his way also because of his background, finding out about his family and where he comes from, his cultural heritage. So I think this is an extremely, extremely accomplished novel. The themes are universal, and also in time, not only in place, but in time. So I really loved this one. And I especially felt that in her last book, George Eliot didn't treat the women in the book as harshly as she did in her previous books, even though some of the women made what we would maybe consider questionable moral choices. So this is, this, I think this is a fantastic book, even though it's not my absolute favorite. And then, of course, there are only 2 books left. And in number 2 is Middlemarch. If I had to choose the best book, objectively speaking, everybody probably would agree it's Middlemarch. It's such an accomplished novel. It's this whole world in compressed in this town called Middlemarch, with all the various protagonists. It's amazing how she was able to juggle all those different protagonists and do justice to all of them. The book centers, if you can say that at all, but one of the very main protagonists, the heroine of the book, is Dorothy Brooke. And I don't think that is a spoiler, but she wants to do something with her life, also intellectually. And because of that, she chooses a man to marry, in this, with this idea that together they would be able to go on an intellectual journey. So he is a scholar, but we know from the start, when we first met them, girl, don't do it. Wrong choice. And then the red thread through the book is what happens and how Dorothy has to live with these choices. But that is not a good summary of the book, because then you have also her nemesis, so to speak, a woman who is very ambitious but very superficial, because Dorothy is a deep soul, but the other woman, Rosamund, is a superficial woman who just wants to have a good life. And then we have a doctor who comes to this town, and Edward is Dorothy's husband, sorry. And then he is, a bit vain, maybe a good guy, but so, and then you have at least 10 other people who play an important role. So this is the most complex book. I would, if you have never read George Eliot, I certainly wouldn't start with this. I probably would advise you to start with Silas Mana, simply because it's the shortest, but you see what type of writer she is, and if that appeals to you, then maybe read Daniel de Ronda next, and then Middlemarch. But it's a fantastic book, and I love to reread it. I think I read it 3 times so far, and if I have time in Victober, I would love to reread this one. And then there is only one book left, obviously, and that is Romola with a glare, which is my favorite. And that is kind of strange, because it's a completely different book than all the other books. Most of the books are in the 19th century, and they explore rural life in a little village, the moral choices, and this is set in the Middle Ages, end of the 15th century. And not even in England, but in Venice. And we have the Medici and Savonarola as a religious leader. And then we have Romola, which is our heroine. And again, the same issues are discussed here. Romola and her father, who is a scholar, and then a stranger comes into their life and takes advantage of them, and how that develops. So it's again very, very moral tale, but the setting is completely different. And I just love everything. I said Middle Ages, which is bullshit. It's Renaissance. So I love everything set in, especially Italy, and the Renaissance or Renaissance, or however you want to pronounce it. I just love it. And I felt this historical fiction, it's the only historical fiction George Eliot wrote. And it's probably not her best book, objectively speaking. But for me, it hit all my soft spots and sweet spots, from the setting, from the themes, from the time period. And that's why this one is my favorite. But it's not a book that gives you your typical George Eliot. So I can totally understand if there are people saying, well, Romola might be a good book, but it's just not what I want from George Eliot because it's so different. Anyway, this is my ranking of the 7 George Eliot novels. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have read any George Eliot, probably more than one, let me know whether you have a favorite or a least favorite. I'm really interested to hear that, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.